Hi, for this recording I'm going to show you very quickly just two features of Blender. Um, One of them is pretty optional and just kind of a helpful little tweak, and the other is actually pretty essential. So for the first thing I'm going to show you is just kind of a tip to help you keep things visually organized. So I've got my Tyrannosaurus Rex skull here that I've made, and this it's a pretty complicated object. It can get a little bit visually confusing. So one thing I like to do to sort of keep track of things visually is down here where you can select your wireframe or solid shaded material or rendered view types. You've got a little drop down arrow, and these buttons actually could be in the top right of your interface, so look there as well in your 3D view. But click the drop down arrow and you can see that you've got some color options here, and I like to change that just to random. And what that does is this isn't how this object will render, but it just shows up if something is a separate object, it'll have a little bit of a different color from something else. So that just kind of helps to keep things visually organized. The second thing I'm going to show you is you can see I've got my camera view here, and I've got a single camera in my scene here, as you tend to do in Blender. If I want multiple views, let's say I have an assignment in Blender or a client who wants multiple views of something, and I don't want to have to move the camera around every time I want to render a new view of my object, I can actually have and use multiple cameras. There are a few different ways to kind of optimize that process, but I'm just going to show you a quick, simple, and easy method of using multiple cameras that doesn't get into a lot of the more powerful and complicated features of Blender. So basically I've got my one camera view and I'm pretty happy with it. I can tap numpad 0 and I can look through that camera view. I can always move my camera around by hitting Shift tilde, and that will enable my video game walking controls. So W is forward, S is backward, A strafes left, D strafes right, Q strafes downward, and E kind of cranes upward. So I can click to commit when I'm happy with my view. There's my camera. Great. Now if I want a second view, what I need to do is create a new camera, and I can do that either by duplicating my current camera, which should just be Shift D, or I can just go to the Add menu, Shift A, and I can click on Camera. And that puts a new camera right in here. You can see it, the 3D cursor, so it's actually inside the skull right now. Let's move that out here, and let's take a different view. I'm just going to kind of move this around. Okay, so I've got a second camera. You'll notice that there's a difference between these two cameras, and that is that this one, the one that I started with, has a filled triangle above it. This new one does not. The filled triangle designates the active camera. So this camera is not active, and if I tap 0 on the numpad, I still look through the active camera. If I want to look through the new one, I just need to right click on it and set it to be the active camera. You can see now that I've got my view, and I can actually use my controls to refine this view a little bit, because that could use some tweaking. Let's see, I'm going to rotate that in Y a little bit to kind of level it out. And yeah, that's a pretty decent view there. So now I've got my two cameras, and if I want to render from one, I just set it as active, and I set my render settings over here, my output resolution and my destination folder and my file type, to probably a JPEG or a PNG, and set my render engine, go to my render menu and render the image. Then if I want to render from the other camera, I select it, right click, and set it as active, and then I'm ready to render from the other camera. Again, I can just render the image again and save it, and then I've got my rendered views. I hope this is helpful. Have a great day.